Magdalena for her introduction.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I cannot see you.
Okay, great. Just a second. Sorry, I'm having some challenges. It's saying the host has stopped my video, so I can't turn it on.
Can you try now?
It says again, like, you can't start the video because the host stopped it. I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll figure it out. How about you talk about your experience and journey so far till then?
Yeah. So hi everyone. Sorry for the technical problems. I just updated my Mac, and I guess Zoom is one of those apps that took a bit of a challenge from this. So yeah, my name is Magdalena. I'm from Turku in Finland. Okay, now you can maybe see me. Yes, hello.
Yeah, I can see you. Hi.
Okay, awesome. Great. So hi everyone. And it's great to be here to meet you all. And yeah, some of you were asking about my background. Was that so? Yeah. So I have a background in educational science. I studied actually teacher education at the University of Turku. And while I was studying there, I did some courses in teaching programming to kids, which I never thought that would be like my interest. But yeah, it was actually really fun. I enjoyed it, and I got a lot of new friends from the IT department of our university. And after that, I started thinking like maybe this would be something I could do more of or learn more of. And so I ended up first volunteering in different kinds of programming clubs, and then doing a boot camp to actually become a developer. So that's how I ended up here.
Great. So is there any specific reason why you chose software engineering?
I never thought, I think that's like a thing that many women experience actually, that I never thought that I would be like a technical person or that I would enjoy engineering. So I didn't kind of like, I never chose to become a developer. It kind of just happened to me later in life when yeah, I guess like I found it as a hobby, and it just kind of pulled me with it. I was volunteering as a mentor for an organization called Pink Programming in Sweden. They have this kind of like Sunday events that you get together and you code. And I knew nothing about programming, but I was volunteering as a mentor there. And through that, then I got like the inspiration. There was the Bootcamp company was one of the hosts of that meetup. So I got the inspiration to apply. They were like rooting on me. So I would do the bootcamp with them, and then yeah, that's how I ended up there. But I think like I never really chose to become an engineer. That wasn't what I envisioned when I was a kid, that I would become.
That's the case with me as well. I never thought I would choose engineering, but that just happened along.
Yeah, I think that's a lot about like the stereotypes that we have about engineering. Like when I was a kid, I was like very, I think, creative, and I loved art. But I never thought that like mathematics, for example, could have like a connection with art, and that would be like in engineering, like the
Yeah,
design and then the like math and physics are meeting there. So you don't have to be like a dry person to enjoy programming. You can be like creative or whatever you are.
definitely. So you mentioned that you attended a boot camp. So how different or difficult it is to switch to programming with a computer science degree versus when you have graduated from a boot camp?
I think it varies a lot, I think, depending on where you live and what environment you come from. For me, I did a boot camp 3 years ago, and I think 3 years ago, the situation was a lot different than it's now. So I see those who are graduating from boot camps now, and also, of course, those who are graduating from universities or colleges now with a computer science degree have a really hard time, all of them, because of the COVID situation and like companies not being able to support juniors or to offer mentorship that would be like required in that state. So I think like when I did the boot camp, it was a different market and it was like easier to get in. But the bootcamp I attended had a program that was based on that they would help you find your first job after attending it, and I think that was a great help. I wish there would be more of those like paths that are supporting people getting their first job, because that's really hard. Most jobs like require that you have experience. You can see this junior developer position ads with like minimum 3 years of experience, which is crazy. So it's really hard to get that first job, I think, regardless like what you studied or what school you attended. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Finding the first job or first internship is the most difficult thing, and I think I have seen a lot of people that find it difficult to find their first job. But as soon as they find their first job, it's easy to switch between the roles and find the next job after that.
Yeah, exactly.
So why Python is your favorite language?
Yeah, so I started off as a C# developer, and C#, for those who don't know, at least some years back, was very, very intertwined with the Windows platform. So basically, yeah, as a C# developer, you were very tied to that one platform and to the rules and like all the environments offered there. And I think like that's one of the big pluses in Python, is that you can use it regardless what OS you are on. Also, like Python has a long history behind it, so there's a lot of other developers who have contributed with different libraries, which makes it just really fun and easy to get started with Python, because you already have stuff like, if you want to work with images, there are image libraries, or sound, there are like libraries for that. If you want to do your first little program with a small drawing on a screen, there's like the turtle module you can use. There's just a lot of support for building a lot of cool things like easily with Python, which makes it really nice, in my experience.
Yeah, definitely. The community for Python is really strong and supporting. And as you said that there are multiple things that we can do with a single language. So I definitely vouch for Python. Okay. So how would you describe contributing to open source? Like for beginners who are just starting out, how should they approach contributing to the open source projects? And what are some of the projects specific to Python that could be beginner friendly and we can contribute there?
I think, yeah, the reason open source is an important topic to me is like politically, I think it's really important that we have that like shared code bases that are open and accessible to all, like usable. The way I started contributing to open source is like first through like just creating own small projects and publishing them, but then also through Hacktoberfest. Of course, this year Hacktoberfest faced some challenges, and there was a pretty stormy start. But I really would encourage people to yeah, take the benefit of those kind of events like Hacktoberfest that really support beginners. I think the first actual open source contributions I made were like after I had already been working as a developer for some time, because like despite what people think, I think open source is pretty hard. You know, you need to really get into a project. It maybe has very lacking documentation. It's hard to, like make a useful contribution. Also, maybe the issue descriptions aren't that clear. The way I usually end up making contributions is like I use some packages and then I find bugs or maybe something that could be improved. So they are already like known projects to me. So for example, Jupyter Notebook is a project that many of you probably know that also can be contributed to. There is the Django REST framework, and a lot of these like bigger projects that are very like widely used in the Python scene. But there's also other stuff like the internationalization library Babel has a Python version that could be contributed to. And I would also like encourage people to do your own project. I mean, even if it isn't like a well-established open source projects, then like doing your own thing, maybe sharing it with your friends. Working on stuff like that is also like a big plus and shared joy.
Yeah, definitely. And I would add that even if it's not code, you can also contribute documentation at first. So you can create tutorials, you can fix small spelling mistakes or like documentation errors, and that count as your contribution as well.
Yeah, that's really a good point. Also, like translations, if you have like some language skills, are very needed in many projects. So I think during Hacktoberfest there were quite like good resources for finding, for example, like translation tickets. If you feel like that's a thing that you would like to contribute.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so machine learning is something that almost everyone is now familiar with because it's so trending and it's so famous now. But what exactly is MLOps? So you work with a company that is mainly focusing on that. So can you describe that a bit?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the term DevOps, which means like the IT operations related to development, then MLOps similarly is kind of we're describing the IT operations surrounding machine learning projects. So I think like machine learning and AI have now come to the point where there has been a lot of like initial hype and a lot of people have been creating their projects. But companies are now looking for a way on really like getting those models into production, monetizing their machine learning systems, kind of making it not only a part of their research, but also a part of their actual products. And that's where machine learning operations comes in with a big role, making that like development process, the versioning, the publishing of new models, the quality control systems for those models. So that's all like kind of what MLOps is covering. And yeah, so it like a short description is like, yeah, the operations around machine learning.
Great. And how does a typical day at a job look like?
So I'm a morning person, but that's like really up to each and every one. We have a very flexible work environment. But I usually come to work around 8. I start looking at we have a very independent way of working. So we have a board with the tickets that need to be done. And then any of our engineers can pick any of those tickets and start working on them. So a bit according to one's own interests or one's own strengths or stuff like that, one can like choose what one wants to work on. And then there's a very thorough review process for each pull request. So definitely like version control, Git is a big part of my work, or a big tool that I use, GitHub. Yeah, so we have Python as a main language, I guess, like in the backend. And we also have then front end with TypeScript, which is the typed version of JavaScript. And I guess like my work is mostly engineering. At startups like I work at or like smaller companies, there's also, of course, the possibility, if you're very interested in doing more like UX or if you're doing like business development, I guess the smaller companies offer like a flexibility to do that also, but I'm like mostly just interested in coding, so that's what I do. And then I usually finish. I try to finish like at 4 or 5 at latest, so I can go home and enjoy my free time and relax, so I can do good stuff again the next day. So I think like going home early is important for me, like free time, relaxing, like kind of letting your brain rest so that it can come up with good stuff again the next day.
I'm not a morning person, unfortunately. I'm a night person. But yeah, as you said, it depends on what works for everyone.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the evening persons are the majority of the IT scene. So I've been questioned a lot because of my morning habits.
yeah. So I have some questions related to job search and resumes, but let's take few questions that are in the Q&A box. So Dinah says, hello, looks like Finland could be different, but what are your thoughts in other part of the world challenges for women to be a data scientist? This field is still male dominant. What would be a good advice for the young female, for example, in Latin America, who wants to advance in her data science career?
That's a really interesting question. I think like it's very hard for me to say because I of course know the scene in the Nordics, in Europe, but I'm not really familiar with like the other specific environments. I think there's a really big support from all the communities online. So I'm sure that there is like some local communities. I think like that's a really good place to get support and get like not only support in like learning new things, but also support in just getting those jobs. I think like men very frequently recommend each other to jobs and positions, and I think like we kind of who are in a minority in the field should definitely try and take advantage of all the networks we have. Yeah, I think in the Nordics, at least, I can see that there is a big trend in people or companies really focusing on diversity, which is like, of course, after having a field where the gender balance is so broken, is like in the aiding phase of that. So we're trying to or companies are really trying to like build the diversity in their teams by focusing on recruiting people of minorities, including then females. So I think in one way there's like a lot of positive pull to those jobs, but on the other hand, then like maybe questions like how do I negotiate my salary can be a bit harder because even though companies are very willing to get in diversity, they maybe still have some unidentified bias in like how they treat different individuals in the dev team and how they see their skills and stuff like that. So that's hard questions.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that the communities are a great way to find support and mentorship. I started my journey with Women Who Code Python last year. I joined as a learner and I find a lot of support. I found a lot of support and that really helped me in my career. So definitely join any communities. You can also join Women Who Code Python. There is a Slack channel that you can join. So definitely look out for that. Let's take another question from the Q&A box. So someone says that to prepare for a first job as a developer, would you recommend learning a few different languages or focusing on one language and learning it more deeply?
I guess that really depends a lot on the different, like what kind of company one is looking for, what kind of like position one is looking for. When I've been in a recruiting position, I've always been in a situation where it would be better to find like a generalist, so someone who knows a bit of maybe a bit of front end, maybe a bit of back end, who is like a bit of like familiar with ops maybe. So it's kind of better that you have a broad knowledge. But then I know also if you're looking for a position that is very specific, that it might be just better to focus on that one area. But I mean, as a general maybe starting point, I would recommend like at least trying out some different things. So if you want to become a Python developer, it's also good to try out a bit of JavaScript. a bit of, so you know your like basic concepts in the front end also that will like support your knowledge about what you're trying to focus on. Having said that, I think when I started working as a consultant. So I was doing I had a very broad kind of like very broad knowledge goals. And that kind of slowed me maybe down a bit in the beginning because I was learning a bit of everything, but then I didn't have any area that would be really strong. So when you get to the point where you have been working for 2 or 3 years, maybe it's time to start thinking about what is my superpower and what do I want to specialize in, because that's like how those maybe gates to more senior positions will start opening for you.
Yeah, I feel the same because it might look like that learning everything is really important, but at the end of the day, you have to pick one field and focus on that only.
Yeah. And having said that, like I think a good senior developer like is an expert in something, but then because you already know your way around one programming language or one technology, then it's more easy for you to learn those other things as well because you have that kind of the base concepts are familiar to you. So yeah,
Yeah,
it
definitely.
goes hand in hand. Yeah.
So what are some of the tips to prepare resumes according to software engineering roles?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so any tips for preparing resumes for software engineering roles?
Oh yeah. Yeah, sorry, my connection is not really super good. Resumes. When I started working for the first job I applied to, I had a CV and I had a cover letter, kind of like describing, I guess, my like interests and my kind of like what technologies I was interested in working with, and like this like kind of my own estimations of my skills in those technologies. But I think the further you go after like your first job, then it will be more based on maybe your LinkedIn profile. Recruiters will probably be contacting you if you're an engineer through LinkedIn. So it's quite important to have, you know, some kind of profile there. You have some kind of profile picture, some kind of description, and you have your work history there. Also, I always link my GitHub repository or the GitHub profile. So I think that's also a big thing that technical recruiters are looking at. So they want to see, have you contributed anything? And what kind of projects do you contribute to? Or like what kind of portfolio do you have in GitHub? So that's like a big plus for recruiters because they actually can see like stuff you made on there. Yeah.
Great. Any words of wisdom for people just starting out their journey as a software engineer or looking for their first roles?
Yeah, let me think. I think like one of the most challenging things is that you have this constant feeling of that you don't know enough. And that's something that kind of is true always, especially as a junior developer, you never know enough. But even like throughout your career, I think that's something that will be following you and kind of haunting your mind, that you're, yeah, if it's called imposter syndrome or whatever people refer to it as, but it's like kind of this anxiety that you're not by identity, maybe you don't feel like an engineer, or you don't feel like a good enough engineer. And I think that's something that's good to acknowledge that everybody, or most people, like I would say like 90% of people that working in this field feel. And it doesn't mean that you are not capable of working these jobs, or that you should quit, or that you should try and change careers, but more of a like sign that you need to take it, give yourself time and be kind to yourself, because these are like very tricky, hard kind of jobs to work, and I guess it's like a lot of problem solving, and it's very kind of emotionally hard. So I'd kind of say like take good care of yourself, your own health, your own like mental health and social well-being, that you feel good, because if you feel good and are happy with your life, then you also will be able to achieve those things that you want to achieve, like in your work life. If you're like very if you feel very tired, or if you feel like emotionally exhausted at work, I would say it's not sustainable. So take good care of yourself so you have the energy to keep being awesome and doing your job and learning more things, because it's a constant process of learning.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. Um, so how to prepare for software engineering interviews, and are there any resources that you recommend to look out for while you're preparing for the interviews?
Um, I know in the Git, like if some of you are on GitHub, there's this awesome resource called GitHub Education Pack, which is like students get some licenses and stuff for free. And when I was a student, I joined it, and I got a free license to this thing called Interview Cake, I guess, which is like they offer some kind of interview training or some like algorithm thinking training every week. I think that's a very like American kind of thing to do. In Europe, software engineering interviews aren't, in my experience, they aren't so like heavily focused on like solving algorithms on whiteboards. Like as I've understood from this Interview Cake app. I think like to prepare for an interview, it's very good to have your own portfolio or projects already done. So that's like something that you can showcase. You're ready to discuss what you made and like kind of explain why you did those decisions that you did. Also, if you wrote some code that you're not entirely happy with, it's seen as a big plus in an interview if you can say like, okay, here I wish I would have done this other choice. In that time I didn't consider it or wanted to take a shortcut or something. So it's not like your code needs to be perfect. It's more about like, are you able to showcase it and discuss it and maybe like discuss ways to improve. So I definitely say like bringing something to the interview is good, especially if they ask. Then yeah, you should prepare. That's some of my biggest interview fails have been like having nothing to show, and then like everything was really horrible. I guess also like you can do a quick recap on some commonly asked questions. I recommend like Googling some maybe language specific questions, so that when those questions are asked, you don't freeze in the interview. That's very common, I guess. The people are very stressed and very nervous. And then when a question comes, if you haven't like recently recapped about it, it can be like a very hard place to start calming down and trying to remember how this thing worked. So maybe like the foundations of like different kinds of databases is always something that I would look at. Also maybe something about like programming paradigms. You can what you would answer to questions like comparing functional and object-oriented programming. Maybe something about memory usage, something about complexity, like stuff. It's very hard to say because it really depends a lot on the place you're applying to. But like the stuff that you feel could be like the generic stuff that is related to that job. And I think like if you prepare well, then it's a lot of easier to be confident there and just to be your like own self to shine. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree about the GitHub Student Developer Pack, because I also have that pack, and there are a lot of things that you get, and there are a lot of free subscriptions. You can learn like from various websites for free. So definitely recommend to check that out. We have few questions in the chat, and I'll just read them for you. Um, 1 second. So you mentioned that Hacktoberfest become a little different this year. This year, they specifically asked those submitting PRs to label them as under the Hacktoberfest. How do you think this has affected new first-time open source contributors?
Yeah, so making your first contribution is really hard. And this year, unfortunately, when October began and Hacktoberfest kicked off, there were a lot of like spam, kind of not serious contributions to repositories, which caused a lot of pain to the maintainers of those projects because they needed to start like rejecting those pull requests and marking them as invalid. Which of course, when you do open source, it's voluntary work. So it's very annoying that you have to spend your free time to this. But I think like because of the fact that they hardened the rules of the competition or the of the month, it became a lot harder for beginners to contribute because it became harder to find which repositories were marked as Hacktoberfest repositories, and maybe also like many open source maintainers didn't want to opt in after this like initial hassle. So yeah, I guess there was a very much limited number of repositories to contribute to compared to the previous years, which led to, at least I had like a hard time finding stuff to contribute to. So I guess like for those who were looking for very beginner tickets, it was even harder. Yeah.
Yeah. Things were different this year, but it happens, and we hope that next year's Hacktoberfest will be better.
Yes.
Okay, another question is, I am a beginner in Python. I started learning few weeks back with Udemy, so a very beginner. But what all resources I can go? How can I progress? What all steps I have to take for my progress?
So I recommend like, I guess if you're learning your first programming language, maybe like the general tip is that programming is, although it's a science, it's very hands-on. It's like doing stuff. It's like a craft. So the more you can try out different things, build different small projects, and just try out what you can use. For example, you can try and make some art with the turtle module, or you can try and build your first small web app, maybe with Django. So if you go to the Django Girls projects, there's a great resource for building web apps with Python, and they have a very like step-by-step guide for beginners to build their first blog, which is very fun. Yeah, try a lot of things, and the more you build, the more you learn. So just don't be afraid to get your hands into the projects.
Learning by doing is the best way.
Yeah, I think like for some adults, it has been really hard because I have been teaching programming for kids, but also for adults. And the kids are more like intuitively getting into the coding and starting building things. But for adults, it's sometimes very hard to accept that I don't maybe fully understand what's going on. And I still have to keep doing this or keep building, but I don't understand every step. So kind of letting go of that feeling that you need to understand everything, that helps a lot. You can't understand everything when you're a beginner. So kind of as long as it works, and enjoy that it works.
True. Yeah. So another question is, if you have been a software developer for over 4 years, but you still only qualify for junior developer jobs, is this a sign you should look into a different field?
I don't think it's a sign that you should look into a different field per se. I think a very important thing in jobs or your work is that when you work, of course, you get salary. That's why we work. That's why we do our jobs. But one very important thing is also that you learn on your job. So kind of, especially in our field, the continuous learning is such a big part of it that your employers should be taking care of, that you have some kind of mentorship in your workplace, that you get some kind of feedback. And I think those who start out in workplaces where there is not proper mentorship or feedback systems in place have a very hard time progressing in their path, because they aren't getting that like feedback from their work that they need. So I think it's not that you are not able to do this job, but it's maybe that you need to think about, are you learning in your job, or what could be stopping you from learning new things? Or is it that you are working with such a specific small thing that you can't find other jobs with that specific knowledge base, or what is the issue? So I think definitely, and also a tip to everyone when you're looking for jobs, also think about that, like as a big plus if you learn cool things, if you are learning languages that are like modern relevant, that you can perhaps see yourself getting work in the future, then go choose those jobs, because that's like the kind of hidden value that you get from your work, is that you gain that experience and that knowledge, and you carry it with you the rest of your career. So it's very valuable.
Yeah, definitely. So another question is, could you describe a technically difficult project problem you have worked on in general terms if you can't give specifics, and how you overcame the problem?
I can describe one of my one of the features of Valohai, what I have been working on. So because this isn't a secret because it's already out there. We have, so as I said, we are a machine learning platform. You can upload your models and connect your data sources, and then you can use cloud resources, machines from AWS or Google Cloud Compute or Azure to run those models, train them, and then get the outputs. That's one of the features we offer. And when you are training your models, sometimes you want to, because you need to have, or in machine learning, the parameters themselves are set by the machine learning algorithm, but the user, or the human behind the data scientist, is setting something called hyperparameters, which are the parameters for the model. Sometimes finding these right hyperparameters can be a very tedious job. And for this task, there have been developed some kind of mathematical solutions. For example, the Bayesian hyperparameter optimization method, where you are training a model, measuring its outputs, and then you are looking back at the hyperparameters, changing them, retraining, and trying to get a better outcome from the model. So we needed to implement this as a service on our platform. And fortunately, there are a lot of open source libraries that already offer the mathematical side of it. But connecting these kind of data science open source tools to our platform was very much harder than what I had initially thought. So I had some mathematical wrangling going on all spring with this challenge, and also did some pull requests to the actual libraries themselves, because they had some small problems and challenges in themselves. And that was very frustrating. I guess always using open source libraries can be hard if they are not maybe like maintained so well as you would hope. But in the end, everything worked out, and now we have our nice Bayesian hyperparameter optimization service in place, and everything is working like well enough to optimize the parameters. Yeah.
That seems like a really complicated problem, and really great that you solved that.
Thank you.
I don't see any more questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the chat or Q&A, and Magdalena would answer that. We'll wait for 1 or 2 minutes for your questions. And also, if people want to reach out to you after this session, where they can find you.
So obviously, as I said, networking is very important. So if you want to connect on LinkedIn, you're very welcome to find me there. And if you need any support in looking at your resume or looking at your portfolio, I can try and help you out if you need it, or some tips about open source. So please drop me a message if you're curious about those things. And I will also, I think, join the Slack of Women Who Code. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The Slack link is there in the chat, and I'm also dropping LinkedIn links to Magdalena's and my profile. So feel free to join us on LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
there is the last question. I see that Diana is asking, have you ever considered to be an entrepreneur? What could be anyone's powerful skill in data analysis to be an entrepreneur in this field?
So what would be being an entrepreneur in the field of data science and machine learning, or?
Yeah, I'll repeat that. So they are asking that have you ever considered to be an entrepreneur? What could be anyone's powerful skill in data analysis to be an entrepreneur in this field?
Have I ever considered being an entrepreneur? Yes. I think like that's something that really interests me, but I also see that it's like kind of a lot harder than just being engineer, because as an engineer I get my full summer vacations and I can go on vacation. I don't have to think about the company while I'm on vacation. Of course, in a startup it's a bit different, but then like if you would be a founder or if you would be in a C-level position, that would be even more different. Maybe you wouldn't have any holidays at all, or any free time in that sense. I didn't quite catch the question about data analysis. That what would be a strength in data analysis?
Yeah, what would be the powerful skill in data analysis to be an entrepreneur in that field, like in the data analysis field?
I'm not really sure, because the data analysis I think is it's quite different from what I'm working with. I think data analytics has is a lot about business and understanding economics more, I guess, than or also like the domain specific matters. I think like if you have skills in using maybe Python for data analysis or any kind of data science, if you find some way to combine that skill in some field where it's very much could produce value. For example, if you find some way to reduce waste using analytics or improve some other process or save energy, I don't know. There is a lot of like these kind of different, very important environmentally questions that need to be solved, and one of the tools that you could use for that would be definitely data analysis. If you are looking to start a company in tech, so having like the technology as a product, then I think looking at it's quite hard, because there are so many different products already available, so many different platforms available. So I think really finding a field that is growing and looking like into it before it has become mainstream. So for example, machine learning and AI are like, there are already so many players running into that field. What will be the next thing? That's interesting.
Yeah, definitely that is interesting. All right, so that's all. We don't have any questions. Thank you so much for your time and doing this session with us. We really loved your insights and answers. Thank you so much for that. And I really hope that the attendees enjoyed this. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop a message in Slack or reach out to Magdalena on LinkedIn, and we would be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you so much again.
Yes, thank you, Yashika, for hosting. Great job.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye. Have a great day, great night, whatever time that is at your place.
Yeah, bye.
Bye bye.